review show. Today, we're reviewing Judas and the Black Messiah. As always, I'm your host, Daniel, with my father and co host, Jerry. Say hi, Dad.
Hello.
Okay, first off, we're both white. It's probably important here on this movie, and when we're going to talk about it. Um, it's essentially the story of how the FBI used a person, I don't remember the character's name, to uh, infiltrate the Black Panthers in the 70s, I believe this was. In particular, in this case, with Fred Hampton, who is a person they essentially assassinated, for lack of a better term for it. They killed him in his sleep. And it kind of goes over that. The three main characters in this movie are the Judas character, I forget his actual name, Fred Hampton, and the FBI person who leads it. And I thought they all did a good job, but my big problem in the movie is we spent so much time with the Judas character compared to the other two. And the other two were more interesting. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes. I would say that, I mean, the story seems to concentrate on Judas
Hmm.
in the thing, and I think that it'd been a better story if it's concentrated on Freddie Hampton and told us a lot more about the organization and about the Black Panthers, because
Yeah.
everybody gets the idea that the Black Panthers were a black group that carried around guns, but they don't really get the idea that they were actually a political movement. They, did a lot of good things for the society,
Hmm.
and that they weren't out to really shoot anybody with the guns. They were just out to protect themselves. He didn't give us a good picture of, and certainly didn't give us. Well, I shouldn't say they gave us the actor was sensational as
Yeah.
Freddie Hampton,
He just won
and
the Golden Globe for it, and I do think he
yeah,
deserved it.
oh yeah, I mean, and he was this. I mean, Freddie Hampton was this charismatic man,
Hmm.
uh, and they gave a, but they didn't really tell us much about him
Yeah, they didn't
in the
give enough.
movie.
Like I said, there were moments like one of the things is they kind of portray him as he could have been like the next Martin Luther King or something in the movie,
Yeah,
and they give us moments of that, but you don't have enough time with him to really realize that. And I realize like saying he could be the next Martin Luther King or something is kind of out there, but um, in the movie it kind of implies that. Obviously, we'll never know if that would be true or not. But I also like, and I think we don't get a good enough feel of him, partially because they just spend way too much time with the Judas character. Um, and even then, like some of the stuff with him, which we'll talk about, I'm sure in a bit, I don't think they fully explore. But uh, like you don't really fully understand the. I didn't feel like I came out of this fully like understanding the Black Panthers, in particular. They didn't seem to like they. I get they only focused on this Chicago chapter, but you didn't kind of get that they were in other cities as much and like other stuff that they were doing at the time. Like they were like protecting and how they were kind of patrolled to protect like black citizens and stuff and citizens in poorer areas from like especially like in the 60s and 70s on it. And like as well as you like one of the things I thought you certainly didn't get is how much the FBI and stuff infiltrated them.
hmm and yeah, we didn't get a good story of Freddie Hampton, and we didn't get a really good story of what the FBI was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it gave us a nice picture overview,
Mhm.
and it's certainly a movie that everybody should watch.
Yeah.
And see what it gave us a good overview of what was occurring in the 70s uh, in Chicago with the black movement and with the FBI, but it just sort of gave us a gloss over of that and
Yeah.
just told us an outline of it.
Yeah.
It didn't really go into anything real heavy. Not, as you said, not even really the Judas. We didn't get
Yeah.
why he did it very much. I mean, certainly he was scared and
Yeah.
things
Mostly
like
trying
that.
to
But
avoid like
yeah,
and like I said, I feel like they needed to like uh and like his character just wasn't like also that interesting because he was just mostly scared the entire time.
Yes.
And like I said, I don't know if like how much they obviously talked about the person in real life who revealed this, like did two interviews, and at the end of the one interview, when it airs, he killed himself.
Yeah.
So you don't know like how much that was in, but a lot of the stuff like with it is like they have obviously at one point they have another person who was an informant that actually killed another Black Panther.
Yeah.
And I actually really like that. I actually really like the FBI agent at the time. I don't know if this is true or not. Like in the one in the movie, they get you to imply like he's against the Black Panthers, but he's against the Black Panthers because he thinks they're like the Ku Klux Klan, and he's somebody that actually had to deal with the Klan. Uh, and they do a good job at showing from his perspective some of the things they're doing is the same.
Yeah.
And even like when it's like, oh, they killed this guy, and he's talking to the guy like, yeah, yeah, see, um, the Ku Klux Klan did the same thing to their traders, blah blah blah, and he's legitimately disturbed when he finds out the FBI was behind it. And I'm not saying he wasn't like entirely racist, but he really wasn't. He wasn't. He certainly wasn't as racist as his higher ups and stuff,
Yeah.
and was shown to be very uncomfortable with a lot of the stuff going on in the FBI. Um,
Well, you get that feel, the Judas is uncomfortable, his agent is
yeah,
uncomfortable, and the only guy that's really comfortable is the guy right at the top,
yeah,
which
who's
was
yeah, him and like that.
it was Robert
Yeah,
Duvall's character,
yeah, Robert. I think isn't Martin Sheen the
or
top of
Martin
that?
Sheen. Yeah,
Yeah,
Martin Sheen.
R-
Character.
Robert Duvall. I think was it Robert Duvall who was the guy that was like the hat. You had Martin Sheen, then you had the guy who was below him, and then you had the FBI agent who was below
Yeah,
that guy
yeah.
on it. And like I said, all of it was like kind of interesting with that, but you never got like really why fully the FBI was after him, other than he was like a
Mhm.
black, other than he was a black militant, so that's why. But on that, you never really got like how they cracked down a lot of these groups. They never went too much into like the Black Panthers are legitimately one of the more fascinating political movements because they're one of the few left wing political movements that like carried guns and uh, talked more about violence and stuff. Um, not necessarily they didn't really commit violence usually, but was and it was more you had to carry the guns to protect yourself and do that.
Well, they were sort of the black
Mhm.
uh, Second Amendment people today.
Well, kinda, but
Yeah, yeah,
I feel like there's a difference. Like, because mind you, with the Black Panthers was the only time the NRA ever went against gun rights.
yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. The only time the modern NRA probably to take them away from. Uh, but they weren't because it was more like they actually, at the time and place, they actually had guns that they needed to protect themselves. Uh, because like it was shown in this movie that well, first off, you obviously had the Klan that was a threat to them for a long time, but you also had the FBI and the police force, um, and just normal bigots and stuff. Like obviously, like they bring up things like Emmett Till in this movie, and
Yeah.
uh, like I think the one person said she babysitted him or something, or
Yeah.
and I never got like it was uh, and they never really I thought fully explored that aspect of it.
Hmm.
Which it's fine because you're doing all this, but I mean the big thing is they just spend so much time on the Judas character.
Yeah.
Like we get he's scared, we get he's being used, but also it didn't show how prevalent this was,
Hmm.
and how many people they were actually doing it, and how many
Yeah.
of them were actually the agitators of a lot of this stuff and intentionally agitating this, which I thought the other one that came out, Trial of the Chicago Seven, did a lot better
Hmm.
on that. And they only had really one scene on it, but the scene worked much better, I thought.
Yeah.
Uh, because it showed like how widespread just the infiltration in these groups was. Um, as well as like some of the stuff. But I liked how they showed I did like how they really showed a lot like how the Black Panthers weren't really while originally started as a black group they were expanding to they were trying to get like the poor whites and stuff that were also somewhat downtrodden and stuff. How they were socialists,
Yeah.
radical socialists at the time. Um, and I do think it did like speak like some of the stuff they did with Fred Hampton's character speak well of him. But I think like some of the things like they just mentioned like they arrested him for stealing ice cream,
Yeah.
and like you could have shown that.
Yeah.
And because like yes, it's absurd for them to talk about it and how he gets a huge he steals something like $70 in ice cream allegedly, and he gets a massive prison sentence.
Yeah.
Um, and like you could have shown more of that.
It's it needed to be a miniseries.
Well, it didn't even need that. It just needed to primarily focus on Fred Hampton.
Yeah.
Um, it needed to focus on him a lot more. Like the
Yeah.
movie's probably about 70% of the Judas character, 10% of the FBI guy, and 20% of the other Fred Hampton.
Yeah.
And it probably should be the other way around.
Yeah.
Um, because uh, like I get it, we're from this Judas character's perspective and stuff. And he does have some conflict in what he's doing and everything, and he's mostly scared because they have him for something like 5+ years in prison for impersonating an officer or whatever.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't though. Like it's one of those things where it's like here's all these interesting stories going around with you have the rise of the Black Panther Party, how they're kind of you have Fred Hampton who's kind of this new figure that they're terrified of at the CIA and FBI. You have the FBI cracking down on them and plotting it. They even make mention of the court case at the end of the movie on that, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit, because you said it was a famous court case. And you have obviously Fred Hampton, and they went with the least interesting thing on that with the Judas character.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like, and it might be more interesting if the guy was like just written more interesting with that, because obviously there's a lot you can do. But it's just like, it's again that thing of here's all these interesting things, let's do the least interesting thing.
Yeah.
Let's follow that. And like I said, I'd honestly really like to see a miniseries on or something on Fred Hampton,
Yeah.
with the same person playing him because he did
Yeah.
such a great job.
Well, I mean, you could concentrate even on the FBI on because we never get a really.
Yeah.
It's
You get
you know.
only at the very beginning do you glimpse at how widespread some of this stuff is, and the fact they have
Yeah.
another informant, and they're kind of just letting the informant get away with murder.
Yeah.
I think wasn't he an actual agent
He was an actual agent of
Yeah.
the FBI
that they
who,
straight up
Yeah.
let murder somebody?
yeah, straight up murdered somebody. Then they used that murder to scare the hell out of the Judas character.
Well, not just that, but to terrorize the
Yeah.
members of the party as a whole
Yeah.
and the thing, and to crack down on them.
And the
I mean, you had that. You obviously had the like, police just burn their building and stuff.
yeah, and of course you had the final assassination scene where you know there was I think they said a huge number of bullets that went in, but only one that came out.
Yeah, well, they shot some like 100+ bullets total,
Yeah, yeah,
and only one was shot from
inside. Yeah.
inside. And I mean,
Oh,
they didn't even open the door or kick in the door. They just started blasting.
yeah.
It's
And
not.
and they made sure that Hampton was dead even before they got.
Well, they had him drugged and then they shot. I mean, they made sure he was. They straight up assassinated him. There's no.
And that was, it was designed yes, to drive out the Black Panthers in Chicago, but it was also designed just to kill off Fred Hampton.
Yeah, and to terrorize the community.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, in that like, I think you could have like also had on that like they were doing this and it was just terrorizing the community,
Yeah.
which is why they had the guns and some of the more militant speech and stuff.
Mhm.
Because like that way you, which makes it because it makes it more like understandable and relatable and that, but like it and I know we talked about like because you said the case is really famous.
Yeah.
Uh, like the guy had the like the defense attorney, not the defense attorney, but like um the because they sued obviously, and he like took the door or
Yeah.
something. Do you show it?
I think there was either in the one in Chicago where they took the door or the one in Cleveland. This happened around the country.
Yeah.
This didn't happen just in Chicago. The clearly it happened in Cleveland, which is where I was living at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that they just went in, say, a situation similar to what happened in Chicago with Fred Hampton, where they went in and they shot up the place. Uh, and I'm not certain if it was the Cleveland case or the Chicago case where the defense attorney actually took the door.
Yeah.
The police got done investigating everything. He went in.
Mm-hmm.
He realized the door was an important piece of evidence, and he actually took it
Mm-hmm.
from the scene and got himself in a whole bunch of trouble over that. But he wanted to preserve it to show that the guys inside were not shooting out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like I said, in this one they fired one shot, and they only
yeah,
fired the shot after they were being shot at,
yeah,
which again makes sense and is
yeah.
something anybody would do.
Hmm.
I mean,
I
and
mean, basically, the Black Panthers just wanted them to go away.
yeah,
You know, they didn't plan to make any trouble,
yeah,
and we don't even get an idea that they were coming in or why they were coming
yeah.
in. And
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm. I mean, you get some of the things like Fred Hampton obviously had a much bigger plan for the Black Panthers at the time by trying to unite the other groups with him
yeah,
and stuff, especially like the ones that were in the poorer neighborhood, the poor white people and stuff that like the Southerners and whatever.
yeah,
They talked about it was heritage, but even he was like, hey, look, we have the same enemy, blah blah blah. It's
yeah.
not. He obviously he had like the soup kitchens and stuff opened and the education things. He was more in the hospitals. He was more interested in opening.
Yeah, he got the money, of course, to get out of jail
Mm-hmm.
and to escape.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, a guy gave him the money
Mm-hmm.
that would give him enough
Yeah.
money to get out of the country, but he decided to spend that on
Yeah.
a
And
medical clinic.
yeah, and I thought that was a good thing to show his character and everything. I don't know if that actually happened or anything,
Oh
but
yeah, the medical clinic I think is still in operation today.
oh well, yeah.
uh,
So I mean, it was a good thing to show his character and what mattered to him and how, and like I said, how he was more I mean, it was one of those things where he was clearly he believed what he was doing was the right thing.
yeah.
He was helping people.
Hmm.
Well, what he was doing was the right thing, but
Yeah.
objectively, but um, and like I said, they were just
Hmm.
and the FBI essentially decided they were just going to eliminate the group
Yeah.
and stuff, and they and so did law enforcement and stuff, and they tear. I mean, it's no different than what you see with like the Black Lives Matter protesters really today or anything.
Yeah.
They just sort of terrorize them. Uh,
And the movie, we condemn the movie a lot, but the movie is a good movie, and
no,
certainly the actor is a
yeah,
great actor. And the movie does give you an overview,
mm-hmm,
but that's all it gives you. It gives you an overview. The Chicago Seven got you into the politics
mm-hmm,
of the time a
yeah,
lot more than this movie, and
yeah. I think like the big reason we've condemned it probably a lot more than we like mean to or anything is because it was a good movie, um, but it should have been a great movie, and
yeah.
they had what was there to make a great movie. They just for some reason didn't. Well, because they just again chose the least interesting thing on it.
Yeah.
Um, and they could have like and they didn't quite like they just didn't quite make it in some things. Like they didn't quite give you the show you how prevalent like they had these infiltration days. Uh, quite how like they were literally terrorized by these law enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
Um, um, and other things on that matter.
Yeah. It just didn't go into anything deep enough.
Uh-huh. And
I
like
don't even.
yeah, go ahead.
I said I don't even think it went into the Judas story deep enough.
Yeah.
Uh, but as you said, it, well, it's like the story wasn't about a guy who
Mm-hmm.
got himself caught up into something that
Mm-hmm.
he did a lot of things that he was really bad and he didn't really want to do, but he got caught up in it.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't have been the
Yeah.
story to start with. This one should have been over uh, the black. Should have been over Freddie Hampton
Mm-hmm.
and what the police did to go after him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and it could be from this guy that's kind of an informant for both.
yeah,
But like one of the problems is like with like again the Judas character is that you never get like he's really like supporting Fred Hampton or having like or seeing where the guy's coming from. He's just always seems to be scared.
yeah,
Uh and that seems to be his primary like he never really like maybe there's the one time where he's helping him rebuild and all, but he just seems mostly scared and stuff and not like he never really has like Fred Hampton's a good person, but I'm being forced to do this. He's just scared. And that just doesn't make him that it just doesn't make him that interesting of a character. He he doesn't have any sympathy that you should probably have for a character put in that position.
yeah,
Um, like I mean he's essentially I mean he's a character that at one point is essentially told, hey, you're gonna have to kill this guy, at least participate in the murder of this guy.
yeah,
Um, and if you don't, you're dead.
yeah,
Um, like I said, you felt worse for the FBI agent who's literally trapped someone in this, and uh, is part of this culture that he all of a sudden realizes that it he realizes that they don't have any intention of like he thinks of them like the Klan,
yeah.
but they're also not treating them like the Klan. They're just terrorizing them.
Mhm.
Um, and it.
Well, he thought of the FBI agent thought of the FBI as the good guys.
Yeah, he thought of them, and he realizes that they weren't.
Yeah,
At least he realizes like, and like I said, I mean, he had a really like I thought the scene legitimately was when you first think like, oh my god, they tortured and killed this guy in the Black Panther Party, and he's like, yeah, see, they're just like the Klan, they're just like blah blah blah, and
yeah,
it kind of confirmed his worldview. And then like the scene where it's essentially like, oh no, the FBI did it. Like it's a really he does a really well job at showing how his whole worldview was shattered in that
yeah,
instant.
yeah,
Uh, and he certainly wasn't, and he certainly was made uncomfortable by a lot of the stuff thereafter.
yes.
The racism and the because obviously the guy ahead of him was fairly racist, and Hoover was Hoover was just crazy.
And we don't know in the story. Remember, it isn't
Mm-hmm.
the FBI guy going to uh, the Judas and giving him the poison.
Well, it's somebody who's obviously working for them.
Yeah, it's somebody who's obviously working for him, but it isn't the same guy.
Yeah, it's a
It's
different
somebody
one.
altogether.
So,
And
I mean, it was all
you
about them.
sort of get the idea that he wasn't part of that, or I mean, you don't really know,
Yeah,
but you
it's
sort of
all
get that idea from the movie.
yeah, it's all about like plausible deniability and stuff.
Yeah,
But it's just I don't know. Like I said, the problem with this movie is I think Trial of the Chicago 7 tells a lot about what's going on, and I think it does it better because at least in that one, like they focused on more on the interesting stuff than this one. The Judas character.
the well, sure, 7 was about anti-war.
Yeah, well, it was about yeah. but it was about the anti-war protesters, and but
Yeah.
but they essentially had a lot of the same things happen to them. Well, obviously there was and obviously like the black character in that one was treated worse
Yeah.
than the white, and but like
Oh yeah.
it had like it did like the infiltration thing, how they were the agitators, how
Yeah.
they were how they just kind of terrorized the anti-war protesters, and
Yeah.
how it was mostly a political thing.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought like because they hit on a lot of the same things, but I felt like I left Trial of Chicago 7 knowing a lot more about the situation, the people involved, and the times than I did this movie
Yeah.
from it. Because like I said, I still feel like I don't know enough about Fred Hampton at the end of watching this movie,
Hmm.
which is not
That's
good in a movie uh, poster Judas and the Black Messiah and Fred Hampton's the Black Messiah
yeah.
uh, movie titled.
Hmm.
Um,
Well,
but
it
it
started
yeah.
the movie. As I understand,
Hmm.
it started off as a biop on when it was first beginning to be pitched. They talked about it being a biop on Fred Hampton,
Yeah, that
and I don't know how they got away from that or what
I don't.
happened in
Yeah.
the phase.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, like I said, I mean, for the most part, like probably the only technical aspect is about the movie that I think it was actually bad was I thought it was just a bit too long. Um, but like I said, I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to recommend this movie, even though I think it's good, because first off, it should be great,
Yeah.
and Chicago 7, while not as much deals with race, deals with a lot of things the same way
Yeah.
and does it better. Um, and just does it so much better, though.
Yeah.
Um,
Even though I thought they had probably maybe a better story. First,
yeah.
you
Well,
see some in the
and like I said, honestly, this movie would have been a lot probably better if it was just kicked out the Judas character entirely
yeah.
and been about the trial of this, where you got flashbacks, the trial of what happened, and
Yeah.
you got flashbacks to Fred Hampton.
Yeah.
Because then you get more like in the you could well, I don't know if he ever testified, the Judas character or anything, but you could kind of like say have it, and you show some stuff like obviously they're infiltrated and stuff, but it just because I mean
Hmm.
first off like they tell you at the end about the trial that just seems like a really fascinating trial
Hmm.
um, on it and what happened, but yeah. Um, like I said, I don't know. I just definitely, it's one of those things where I'd recommend Trial of the Chicago 7 over this movie about 100 times out of 100.
Yeah.
Oh, 100 times out of 100. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's a good movie that should be great.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
and it
it's
certainly
an
had the stuff, it had the talent behind the camera, the talent in front of the camera, certainly,
yeah.
the right producers. It just kind of got in its mind, it's going to be the story about this great betrayal and stuff. That's the aspect that did not work.
Yeah.
Uh,
And as you said, it should have been more emphasized on Fred Hampton and what the FBI did to
mhm.
it.
Like I said, even things like when they did like talk with Freddie Hampton, it had a lot of it was like somewhat with his I don't know if she was ever his wife, but his girlfriend slash baby mama at the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like and again that was just some of the least interesting stuff on it.
Yeah.
Um, and if the whole movie was about him, that would have been a decent B plot. That would have humanized him more, made him look more
Yeah.
normal.
Mhm.
Uh, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Um, and so uh, so that was just like I don't know on that. It's just kind of it's one of those things that it's frustrating to go over because I'm like, man, this could have been so much better, and it was
Yeah.
so close.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I take it you have about the same opinion there.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a movie we're seeing. It's a movie that gives you a good picture of what the 70s was about
Mm-hmm.
and about race relationships and uh, the beginning of the the beginning of the black movements.
Well,
Uh, it,
well, I guess this might have been towards the end of one of them.
well, yeah, the movement, the Black Panthers was one of the high points of the 60s and 70s. You started off in the 50s with the Freedom Riders,
Hmm.
and you get up to the 60s and 70s, and then all of a sudden we went in the 80s, and everybody says, well, the blacks have got their rights now.
Yeah, you like how they had the
Yeah,
fair housing right in one of the housing acts, in the year so distant from 1980 and 1979.
yeah,
But I mean, you had. Well, I
yeah,
mean, it didn't help that you killed all the big black leaders
yeah.
and killed or imprisoned a lot of them.
Well, you had a lot of, yeah, you got Medgar Evers, you
Yeah.
had, uh,
Well, I mean, you had. I mean, obviously had the. I mean, you obviously had probably the three or four big ones, and well, or ones that were significantly helping the cause. You had obviously MLK,
yeah,
JFK, RFK, and
yeah,
Malcolm X, which
yeah,
I realized two of those guys are white, but two of them were heavy into
yeah,
that. That all those guys were assassinated within 10 years of each other.
yeah.
But then you have people like Fred Hampton. You have, like you said, you have
Well,
the other stuff going on in
Medgar
Cleveland.
Evers and
Hmm.
the beginning of it. Uh, but that's what happened. All of a sudden, we got Ronald Reagan, and we got,
Hmm.
you know, well, they actually got all their rights. Now all they have to do is work.
Yeah,
And
not
of course, that ends up with a guy being held down the street by a guy's knee.
yeah.
But
Yeah, never mind. Or
yeah,
never mind that. Never mind the fact that we're more segregated in schooling now today than we were in the 60s and
yeah,
50s, where the average black household has something like 5 or 7% the wealth of the white one, and
yeah,
but that's all work ethic, obviously.
yeah,
Um, doesn't have anything to do with the fact when we freed the slaves, we gave them nothing at the same time we were giving white people land,
yeah.
or how the New Deal excluded them or anything. No, that would never um,
Yeah.
happen. But yeah. Okay, I think that about sums it all up.
Yes.
Again, thank you all for listening, and please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you, and good night, or
Yes.
good morning, whatever time it is.
Yeah.
Bye.